Hello, it's Mel here, and in this video I'm going to show you how you can install Windows 11 in VMware Workstation. So VMware Workstation is now free for all users. VMware announced, actually it was Broadcom. Broadcom has bought out VMware, and they've now actually announced as of November 2024 that VMware Workstation and Fusion are now free. Now Fusion is for the Mac version and Workstation is for Intel-based PCs. But coming back to VMware Workstation here, so I'm going to create a virtual machine. So I'm going to help you understand some of the settings here that you need when you're installing Windows 11. So I'm going to use the custom advanced version because this just helps me understand exactly what I'm choosing. Selecting the hardware compatibility for the latest version here. I'm going to select an install disk. I've downloaded the ISO for Windows 11. An ISO file is a virtual version of a CD. So you may need to purchase a license before you can do this, and click next. Now I'm just going to use a default name there, and I'm installing the virtual machine. Now you can choose a different location to put your virtual machine. Just be aware when we get to the point of creating the hard disk, you want to ideally put it in the same location unless you know what you're doing. Now, something that is new with Windows 11 that we didn't have with Windows 10 is that you need to encrypt some of the files to support Windows 11's requirement for the TPM module. So TPM stands for Trusted Platform Module. That's a hardware module if you've got an actual PC, and here we're just emulating it. Now, because this is a demo, I'm just going to put in a simple password here. So this is the password for the encryption, and you can choose whether you want to do only the files needed to support TPM or whether you want to encrypt all files. If you're just practicing like me, you just doing only the files needed is going to be sufficient. I'm also going to remember those settings so I don't have to think of the settings. And I'm not going to bother with secure boot because this is just for testing as well. Okay, now I'm going to bump up my processors a little bit just to make my machine run a bit faster. I think 4 gig of memory is probably enough just for my testing. And I'm going to use host-only networking to start with, because I don't need to connect to the internet for this testing. If you needed internet connection for some reason, you might use NAT. I'd recommend using this second option here. But if you're, say, testing some software that you want to download, you don't need an internet connection. So you can just use host-only networking. Okay, and I'm just using the defaults there, and I'm going to use the defaults here as well for the disk type. Now, I'm going to create a new virtual disk. So I don't have a hard disk for this machine, and we're using a virtual hard disk. So I'm creating one. The other two is more if you know what you're doing, okay? So if you're not sure, this is the first time you're doing it, you're definitely going to be choosing the first option. Now, 64 gig, just for my testing purposes, that's probably a bit big. I'm going to drop it down to 30. And you don't want to allocate, for testing purposes, you definitely don't want to allocate the disk space now. And I'm also going to store it as a single file, because if I need to make any changes later and move, if I want to copy that hard disk and do some more advanced stuff later, I probably want that as a single file. Okay, if you are going to have a very large disk, then you might want to use a second option, but that's not the case here. All right, now the 30 gig drive. Now this is when you want to make sure that you're storing this in the same place. Mine's already set up to do that. This is just confirming all my settings. I'm happy with that. And we go ahead and create that virtual machine. Okay, so that virtual machine has now created and it has started to boot. I'm just going to select OK for that one. And it's going to automatically boot to that CD-ROM. Now, I need to click in this window though, and I wasn't fast enough. So I'm going to have to reboot this machine because I wasn't quick enough in pressing a key to get it to boot to the disk. Now, what you will find when you have this, my mouse is locked, right? I can no longer my mouse has gone into that virtual machine and I can't click the settings at the top of the screen. So what you can do is press Control and Alt, and you can see that's popped my mouse back. I can now come up here and I'm going to restart this guest. And we call this a guest machine because it's not the host. Now I'm going to click in here so my mouse is ready. So my mouse is inside that virtual machine now. And shortly that message should pop up. Okay, there we go. And I'm going to press a key. Right now I'm going to boot to that disk. You got to be fast. You got to be on the ball with that one. Oh, something's happening here. Okay, this is great. Now, I always like to choose my location straight away. If you're in the US, that's fine. But I'm actually in Australia. So to get my settings set up straight away, I'm going to select Australia. Keyboard, we use the same keyboard, so that's fine. And here I'm going to select Install Windows 11. Now, I'm not going to put a product key in at this point because I'm just doing this for testing purposes. Okay, so I'm going to select I don't have a product key. Now, make sure you don't do this on an actual machine that you're using for production, because I'm just doing a test install, mucking around and then deleting it. That's okay. I'm just going to choose Windows 11 Pro at this point. We go through the license agreement. We're in theory supposed to read that, and I'm going to click accept. Now it's come up with my choice to install Windows 11. So this is the disk that I created. Remember, it was a 30 gig disk. So I'm going to select that, and a brand new disk always needs partitions created on it. You can see I can actually choose to create a partition. After I created one, I can also format it in the type that I want. Windows 11 is actually going to do this for me, but I'm going to actually select next. And so now I'm going to click install. Now this is going to take a little bit of time. So I'm just going to pause this and I'll return when it finishes installing. The first part of the installation is now finished, and now we have what's called the out-of-box experience, where we set up the configuration, regional settings and all that. So here we've got, yes, we're going to select Australia. It's already figured that out. And the keyboard, again, it's asking us for the keyboard. And I don't want to add a second keyboard. Now, this is where it gets a little bit interesting with Windows 11. When we get to this point of the installation, it's trying to ask me for internet access. Now, the issue is if I actually provide internet access to this VM, it's then going to force me to create or log in with a Microsoft account and with my email address. Now, sometimes you just want to do testing without having to do that. And so, but there's no longer any option. Microsoft has taken away the options to be able to have this local account. So at the moment, there is still a little bypass option. I don't know if Microsoft will close this door in the future, but when you get to this point, I can press Shift F10 and it brings up a command prompt. Okay, and in here, I can type OOBE bypass NRO. So this is going to bypass the network requirements and does a little reboot. Okay, and now we get presented with these settings again. So I'm going to say yes to Australia and US. I'm going to skip. Okay, so now this time you'll see I've got this option, I don't have internet. Just going to enter a name. Now this is just a test and simple password. Now, unfortunately, it's going to force me to now do security questions because I'm using a local account. I don't really care about these though. So I'm eventually going to delete this virtual machine, so I don't care what I'm actually inputting for that. Now, I do always turn off these settings, so I don't actually really want Microsoft get extra data about me. The only one I sometimes put on is the location one if it's a laptop. Okay, sometimes it can be useful, and Find My Device. Those can be useful if you want to be able to track your laptop. Okay, I'm going to accept those settings. And here we go. So now we've actually got our Windows fully installed on this machine. The next step that I would do with VMware is to install the VMware tools, which I'll cover in another video.